Tonight, vote for our lives.
We're given a voice, we're given this right, we need to use it.
After a shooting that shook the nation, victims of the Parkland shooting unite to get students to the polls, how their movement has evolved, and new steps taken to turn tragedy into action. Plus,
we have to stand up, speak out, and do whatever we can.
An upstream battle. The red tide hits Florida's coast, causing a wave of damage to Florida wildlife and beaches. Updates on the political fight against the environmental crisis. And a year of recovery for South Florida after one of the largest hurricanes to hit the Panhandle. A look back 1 year after Irma. Also, race to the polls. We have seen big names on the campaign trail. Will their efforts to boost voter turnout pay off or take a plunge? We have live election results coming up. You're watching the UMTV Election Special, the midterm.
After weeks of campaigning and debate, today is the day.
Florida residents have been hitting the polls and the votes are coming in. Good evening and welcome to the UMTV Midterm Election Special. I'm Brianna Ross.
And I'm Alex Manella. Thank you for joining us. The polls will be open for another half an hour, but the celebrations are already beginning. UMTV reporter Tage Joshi is live at the MTV Election Party in Kendall. Tage, what's happening?
Thanks, guys. I'm here at the Miami-Dade College Kendall campus, where MTV is hosting an election watch party. Big-name artists like DJ Nasty and Fat Joe are slated to perform here on the stage in the Health Center. The event tonight is aiming to boost future student voter turnout. And this week, UMTV reporter Trayvon Howard checked out the state of current student voter turnout.
It's election day, and some University of Miami students and partners made sure students were aware.
We're at farmers markets, we're going door to door a little bit, really just trying to make sure that people, one, know the election is coming, and two, are planning to vote.
With the midterm elections here, the Butler Center worked with student organizations and outside partners such as League of Women Voters to assist students with registration.
When we're invited by student organizations or maybe by the Butler Center, just to support any efforts that are already going on to educate voters about upcoming elections and things like that.
Along with the League of Women Voters, Next Gen America was represented. Frankie Hedgepath is a senior majoring in Africana Studies and Political Science at UM and has a fellowship with Next Gen America.
Present voting as like not a chore, but something that you should be excited about and something that needs to be done. I think that's probably a good way to summarize like what most of our efforts are.
Next Gen America is a nonprofit and political action committee that takes on projects linked to climate change, immigration, and so much more.
I mean, fulfilling is one word that comes to mind. I think that's part of the reason that I got involved.
He believes one of the most important ways to tackle issues is by voting. Though statistics done by Pew Research Center show that the younger generation has more registered voters, the numbers for actual ballots cast with this demographic are not where they should be.
It can be complicated to vote in terms of figuring out what day you should vote, where you go, what sort of ID you need to show up at the polls, and younger voters may not have they haven't been through it, and so they haven't acquired the habit of doing it.
I know that the numbers show that young people turn out at a lower rate to vote than other ages of people, but I think that's really changing, and I'm excited to see that happening nationally and here on UM's campus.
With the general election here, there is one piece of advice to pass along to all voters.
Just vote. I mean,
For UMTV, I'm Trayvon Howard.
Student voter turnout is certainly key for future elections. I'll be back with more updates from Miami-Dade College.
Student survivors from the Parkland school shooting are taking their message against gun violence from the streets to the polls. The student activists who created the March for Our Lives movement have founded a second movement called Vote for Our Lives. The student organizers have stopped at college campuses in cities around the country to encourage young people to get out and vote. One of the stops on the tour was here in Miami at Florida International University. The Parkland students raided dorms and used their own shuttles and golf carts to get students to the polls. The event ended with a barbecue and dance party. Organizers of the event say the main mission is to have the interests of young people represented. We're given a voice, we're given this right, we need to use it, and the young people can win.
You have to go out and vote for people that are going to represent you and represent your values.
The Vote for Our Lives movement has made 11 stops so far. Their last stop was today in Parkland, Florida.
The shooting at Marjorie Stoneman Douglas High School has left a lasting impact on students and families alike.
And they have been advocating for stricter gun laws since the shooting on February 14th, 2018. Our reporter Portia Bowdish talked to one father who is leaving his mark in cities all around the country. Portia?
That's right, guys. Joaquin Oliver was a victim in the Parkland tragedy that occurred on Valentine's Day. His father, Manuel Oliver, is using art to fight against gun violence. I talked with Manuel just a couple days ago.
Because the price that I paid of losing my son is not even close to how you feel today. Yeah.
Manuel Oliver turned his art into activism after his son Joaquin was killed at Marjorie Stoneman Douglas High School in Parkland, Florida.
I want to make sure that nobody forgets the victims, and because my son is a victim, I am turning him into an activist.
Manuel has painted walls all over America, including Los Angeles, Chicago, Orlando, New York City, Wynwood, and Fairfax, Virginia, right across from the NRA headquarters.
But this is a victim itself talking to you. So if you don't get it when a victim is telling you, hey, dude, I'm dead, and it's really bad because I was only 17 years old, that's the message that I want to send out there.
Joaquin's friend Sam Zeif survived the shooting and now works with Manuel's organization Change the Rev. He says his favorite piece was when Manuel 3D printed a life-size version of his son and put it in Times Square to protest 3D printing guns.
Working with his family it's amazing. Just kind of being there. I like working with them for the same reason they like working with me, and it's kind of because we can feel a different part of him when we're with them.
Manuel says the 3D printing project was painful to make, but rewarding.
Since February 14th, I was never able to see my son standing next to me till that Saturday.
All of this is leading up to November 6th, when Manuel hopes Americans will vote against gun violence.
I want anybody that is supported by the NRA to be voted out. My fight is directed to the gun lobby. I see the gun lobby as a cartel that it's able to put money into politicians' pockets, so I don't buy that.
To check out more of Manuel's work, go to changetheref.org. You probably noticed Manuel's hair is dyed bright orange. That's the color of gun violence prevention. I'm Portia Bowdish, back to you guys.
The University of Miami School of Communication welcomed some of the Parkland shooting survivors to campus last night at the Cosford Cinema for an open panel discussing the power of taking a stand. The panel featured 4 organizations led by Parkland student survivors, each with different missions for enacting social change. The conversation included the effect of the tragedy on the survivors and how it has shifted their silence on gun violence to a plea for reform. The panel was led by Philanthropy, an advertising event for the nonprofits in the community. Director Merrill Blau announced that the upcoming annual 24-hour campaign would only host the 4 organizations present at the panel, setting the stage for the largest campaign in 10 years.
More power we can put behind their efforts and really be a part of making national change. We just can't think of a better way to really spend our 10th anniversary than to make the kind of impact that this has the ability to make.
The survivors also dove into trending topics such as mental health and political activism. UM students were able to engage with panelists and share their perspectives at the end of the event. Philanthropy will be held in February of next semester through the School of Communication. In the meantime, you can donate to the Survivors Fund for Marjorie Stoneman Douglas students at browardedfoundation.org/Stoneman Douglas Victims Fund.
And gun violence continues to be a problem across our country. One of the latest mass shootings happened in a synagogue in Pittsburgh more than 2 weeks ago, where 11 people were killed. UMTV reporter Madison Brown has been following the story and the University of Miami's efforts to support students in the wake of this tragedy. Madison?
Just more than a week after a neo-Nazi sympathizer opened fire in a synagogue in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, killing 11 people and injuring more than a dozen others, communities all over the country, including here at the University of Miami, are working to move forward. Hillel hosted Father Patrick Dubois, a world-renowned human rights activist at the Bremen Miller Center for Jewish Student Life, who also founded the Together in One nonprofit to uncover genocide around the world. Father Dubois has been honored by Pope Francis and by the French President Emmanuel Macron. University of Miami student Gabby Aklepi joined dozens of others at the Bremen Miller Center for Jewish Student Life on Monday night. Students and community members from all backgrounds and faiths came to listen to Father Patrick Dubois, a leading expert in fighting hate and bigotry, in the wake of recent events.
I think that it's important to listen to people who are experts in genocide and experts in past travesties, because as we see today with the recent Pittsburgh shootings in the US and different incidences around the world, that bigotry and violence is a recurring theme in this world, unfortunately, especially against minorities and especially against Jews.
Father Dubois is an author, historian, forensic detective, and professor who has dedicated his life to fighting genocide and bridging the gap between faiths. While Hillel had the event with Father Dubois scheduled for several months, the timing of his speech is even more significant just over a week after a neo-Nazi sympathizer shot and killed 11 people at the Tree of Life Synagogue in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania.
Now more than ever, this topic is as, contemporary and as timely as it could have been.
Father Dubois shared advice on how to move forward after the tragedy.
We must not be afraid, not be paranoid, but we must know our enemies, otherwise we'll awake in a nightmare.
This is not the first step that Hillel has taken to help students move forward in the aftermath of the shooting. A week before Father Dubois arrived on campus, more than 100 students, including Gabby, gathered at the Rock to reflect on the tragedy and show solidarity.
As an interfaith worker, I think that it's important to have conversations with people who are different than you, who have different beliefs and different passions and values than you. As a Jew and as a woman, as a student at I think that one of the most important things that we can do every day to fight hate and fight bigotry is just to stand up for each other and to really be a part of and be a proponent of this culture of belonging.
I would say we have a duty. I hope Pittsburgh is not the beginning. And so we must not only cry, we must not only put candles and make prayers. We must grow a new generation who is strong.
Reporting for UMTV, I'm Madison Brown.
Thanks, Madison. It's really a shame that we still have to have these things happening in our country.
It's incredibly unfortunate, and we'll have to see if that affects the way voters are going to be voting in polls.
Yes, hopefully it does.
We'll have to see. And still after the break, we'll take a look at live polling results, but first, the hurricane that plowed through the Panhandle and caused catastrophic damage is now a memory. Where are we now? A look at recovery efforts 1 year after Irma.
And from toxic mess to political frenzy, Florida's fight against the red tide continues, with commissioners speaking out against the environmental crisis. We'll share the lasting effects of the red tide on tourism and local businesses in Miami. Florida voters on both sides of the aisle are watching several close races.
That's right, Brianna. The races for governor, Senate, and Congress in District 27 are all coming to a close. UMTV election specialist Dave Downey has been eyeing the projections and joins us with the latest. Dave?
That's right, Alex. 3 key races up for grabs here today in South Florida. Governor Rick Scott is leaving his position as Republican incumbent governor and is challenging the Democratic incumbent Senator Bill Nelson for his spot in Washington. That empty space in the Florida State House for governor is being challenged by former Tallahassee Mayor Andrew Gillum and by Republican nominee Rob DeSantis. The final crucial race is for the 27th Congressional District here in Florida. Democratic nominee Donna Shalala is trying to fend off Republican challenger Maria Salazar, who blitzed her competition in the primary earlier this year. That district covers a large part of the city of Miami, as well as many municipalities such as Miami Beach, Coral Gables, South Miami, Pinecrest, and Key Biscayne. GOP incumbent Ileana Ross-Lehtinen is retiring this year after serving her only term after the 27th district was formed back in 2013. Gillum's camp felt pretty confident going in today, especially considering the early voting margin trend is favoring the former mayor. Republicans have typically held that early voting advantage, although the 28,000 margin vote that was reported on Sunday is smaller than what it has been in years past. Pollsters report that Gillum's 3.6-point advantage is within the margin of error, so DeSantis, the former congressman, I should say, is still keeping the race too close to call, with the polls closing just a few moments ago. A similar story is on tap for Democratic candidate Bill Nelson to fend off Republican challenger Rick Scott. Pollsters have Nelson ahead by an average of 2.4 points, but that is also within the margin of error. Scott actually held the lead in most of the polls for the majority of the summer, but after Nelson ramped up his campaign spending in September, he regained the advantage. The race is still too close to call and will be one to watch heading into the night. Shalala and Salazar's race is a little bit more foggy with only 2 polls held during the month of October. Former UM President Shalala holds the advantage in those 2 polls, but is still yet too close to call. Votes are coming in now. I'll have more updates later in the show. Back to you guys at the desk.
Thank you, Dave. 1 year has passed since the devastation caused by Hurricane Irma's Category 5 force winds.
Hurricane Irma hit the Florida Panhandle last fall, but the natural disaster caused catastrophic damage to Florida's infrastructure. UMTV reporter Trayvon Howard is live in studio with updates on the community's recovery. Trayvon?
That's right, guys. One location on campus in particular is still recovering from the devastation caused by Irma. And as you know, the hurricane's destructive path reached the Upper Keys, where one student's family continues to pick up the pieces left behind by the storm. A new fall semester brings in hurricane season, and I don't mean just our football team.
It was really hot. There's no air conditioning, no electricity.
September 10th marked 1 year since Hurricane Irma made landfall as a Category 4 in the Florida Keys, where UM senior Luis Gonzalez was born and raised.
Having that sense of, hey, my childhood home is going to be there when we get back was definitely really nerve-wracking.
His father and grandparents each have homes in the Keys, and his grandparents' homes were damaged.
We just built my grandma a house for her, and I was just hoping it was going to be there at the end of the day, and one for my grandfather as well. His is really old, so I was just hoping that he would have a place to go home to.
The storm left his grandfather's home with trees and seaweed debris everywhere. His grandmother's driveway was ruined, leaving warped doors and cabinets scattered.
All of the seaweed came onto his property, and I still remember the smell, how bad all that dried up seaweed was, because it was about 4 or 5 days before we could actually go down there.
Lewis says the hurricane took more than just buildings from the Keys. It took people's sense of security.
It went from a place where you could really enjoy the moment to a place where now you can sort of enjoy the moment, but all the locals are still thinking a step ahead.
Irma affected not only the local students, but many students from out of town who scrambled for flights. Some were able to get out, but for others, it was not possible.
The majority of people have the ability to just go home, but for me, it wasn't an option.
Ahmed Alaharje is a sophomore majoring in public relations from Qatar. Last year, with the storm at Miami's doorsteps, a flight across the world was a far reach.
I obviously can't go home, so I had to just figure out where else I could go.
UM offered local shelters for those who could not secure flights, but Alaharje did not opt for this after hearing bad reviews about public shelters.
I was advised by my RA and just other peers that I had that staying at the shelter was probably not the best option.
So Alaharje's parents recommended he reach out to the Qatari government for help. With their help, he was able to secure housing in Washington, D.C., where the Qatari Cultural Attaché office is located.
I ended up going to Orlando first, and then from Orlando, I flew to Washington, D.C.
Post-Irma presented more challenges for the university. The cleanup efforts took weeks, but for one location on campus, weeks were not enough.
The whole Arboretum should have been just closed to allow remediation. There wasn't any rush to get it back open because school was opening.
A hidden gem, the Arboretum at UM houses exotic plants from all across the world, and many are not there anymore.
And that's been the biggest challenge after Irma. Some of the plants we lost are still not replaced because they're very difficult to find.
With hurricane season at its peak in September, Steve says he's hoping for the best.
And I hope next time we just close the whole area down to allow the most salvaging of good plants that we can.
For UMTV, I'm Trayvon Howard. Now, the Arboretum is in the process of planting and restoring new and exotic plants. Repairs have been made to damaged home homes, and students know what to expect for next hurricane season. But one thing Irma taught the UM community is that you can never be overprepared. Guys?
Thanks, Trayvon. Former Florida Governor Rick Scott is escaping legal trouble after it was reported that Miami Beach commissioners were gearing up to sue Scott over the way he handled the red tide crisis. The commissioners chose not to sue Scott after realizing the lawsuit would more than likely be thrown out.
I think we're afraid to ruin the tourist industry, but we have to stand up, speak out, and do whatever we can. And that means if we have to stop building and figure out infrastructure to make sure that our water quality is decent and safe, well, then we have to do it.
The worst red tide to ever strike the coast of Florida in over a decade has sent 50% more Florida residents to the hospital since the algae bloomed at the end of August.
The harmful algae bloom is also hurting Florida's economy that relies heavily on tourism and seafood industries. UMTV reporter Charlotte Payne joins us live in studio to tell us about how this red tide is affecting the state of Florida. Charlotte?
Thanks, Alex. The growth of an algae known as the red tide is a natural environmental occurrence that pops up every year. But this year, Florida is experiencing the red tide like never before.
When I analyzed about 50 years worth of data, I found that the red tide today is on average about 15 times more abundant now than it was 50 years ago.
And why is that? Larry Brand is a professor of marine biology and ecology at the University of Miami. He's been studying the red tide for many years.
To generate more red tide, you need more nutrients. The problem is, now that we're feeding 7.5 billion people on the planet, that means a huge amount of agriculture, and so a lot of fertilizer runs off these agricultural fields. On top of that, once the food goes through people, then you're generating sewage, and there's a huge amount of sewage now. And so now what you have is excess nutrients, much larger than the natural amount.
And when there is such a surplus of this harmful algae bloom, people get sick.
This toxin gets in the air and it acts like a tear gas. It's a neurotoxin, and it starts irritating your nose and eyes and throat and lungs.
Beaches along the coast have been shutting down as a result of the red tide, and that is not good for Florida's economy.
But the economic impact of Biscayne Bay on Miami-Dade County as a whole is $6 billion. So if we put that at risk and you can't swim and you can't do water sports in the bay, we are going to have a serious problem. People come here to shop, they come here to go to the beach and swim. The big attraction here is water.
Nonprofits are forming with the mission of monitoring water quality in South Florida.
People are taking over responsibility for government because there's just no trust.
How can we combat this issue?
We have a corrupted system that contributes to both parties, Democrats, Republicans alike. But vote for the person that definitely recognizes that we have a problem. We have, 60, 80 years in the state of Florida with industries polluting our environment. You don't get rid of it overnight. We've got a lot of hard work to do.
Now, the red tide has made its way to the east coast of Florida, something that researchers and politicians did not think would happen. And some politicians say the best way to stop the spread is for residents to go to the polls. For UMTV, I'm Charlotte Payne. Now back to you guys.
Thanks, Charlotte. It'll be interesting to see how long this red tide problem continues and to see if anything is done about it.
Yeah, I actually haven't experienced it yet. I usually frequent Key Biscayne and I haven't seen it. It hasn't ruined any of my beach days yet, so hopefully it stays that way. And coming up after the break, a school divided. A racist video online sparks outrage from University of Miami students. The key message one campus organization is sending just ahead.
And top competitors have gathered a variety of big-name supporters on the campaign trail. But what about the underdog? How a third-party candidate fares in an intense election, right after a short break.
I think it's very disheartening to see that coming from a student at this university, especially knowing that we pride ourselves on the diversity and the inclusion.
That was student body president Evan De Hoya discussing his reaction to a racially biased video posted by a UM student. The video surfaced more than 2 weeks ago and has sparked outrage on and off campus. That video included racial slurs targeting African Americans and offended many of the students on campus.
We're joined now by UMTV reporter Chelsea Lavelle. Chelsea, we know students had strong opinions about the video, but what actions are UM administrators taking to prevent incidents like this in the future?
That's right, Brianna. The video was extremely upsetting for many students. We do know that disciplinary action was taken, but the university has chosen not to release any further details. I sat down with the director of the Multicultural Student Affairs at UM to talk about the video and how similar incidents are affecting the election.
And this is a dead.
On October 5th, a video of a University of Miami student was posted of him using derogatory and racial slurs, and UM students had a meeting to share their thoughts on the video.
Obviously, the students were very offended, and they were disappointed and saddened to hear someone who's a peer use that type of language. And I definitely think there was a call and a sentiment that we should be doing better, that we should expect more from the people who are a part of our community, because diversity is important, and it's one of the things, a main reason that people say they come to the University of Miami.
Racial slurs have not only been an issue on campus, but it has also been seen on a national level in the gubernatorial race with Andrew Gillum and Ron DeSantis.
The last thing we need to do is to monkey this up.
If elected, Andrew Gillum would become the first Black governor of Florida, but to get there, he first has to overcome one major hurdle.
I can feel it. Race is an issue that has come up in our politics. We've heard this in the rhetoric from the White House. We've heard this in the rhetoric of people who are running from office. When you think about even Florida in itself, the fact that Andrew Gillum is a Black man has been really a part of the conversation for a lot of people. When you have the box that sort of we all check, whether it's your race, your ethnicity, your gender, those are the things that people tend to focus on immediately.
According to the Pew Research Center, voting in the 2016 election was strongly connected to the voters' values, particularly in race, gender, and sexuality.
In terms of the diversity that's here, I think that we're doing a great job for the size of institution that we are. I think it's important for us as a society to really value representation. At this point, what I think would be helpful is if we are to elect different people from different backgrounds, because that's the only way we're going to continue to open up dialogue and move our country forward. It's the reason why higher education values diversity in the first place.
And now more than ever, the Multicultural Student Affairs program is pushing to increase its initiatives further on campus diversity. They will be hosting a roundtable discussion throughout the semester in order to engage students from all backgrounds in conversations surrounding racial diversity. The next panel will be held tomorrow night at 8 p.m.
As the race for governor heats up, Democratic candidate Andrew Gillum received an endorsement from one former president. On Friday, with 5 days to the election, former President Barack Obama and Senator Bill Nelson held a rally in Miami's Overtown district in support of Democratic nominee for governor of Florida, Andrew Gillum.
The real reason I came down to Miami, because this Tuesday might be the most important election of our lifetimes. Politicians will always say that, but this time it's actually true.
Obama endorsed Gillum, citing Trump's immigration and health care policies as dangerous and calling Tuesday's election an opportunity for voters to embrace a politics based on sense we are all in this together.
Third-party contenders have historically swayed voters away from respective leading parties. Nearly 20% of poll respondents are not currently supporting either major party candidate. Our reporter Paul Schultz went out and spoke to a non-party affiliated candidate. He joins us live to tell us in studio more about this.
This election season, the most senior U.S. representative from Florida, Ileana Ros-Lehtinen, is retiring and her seat is up for grabs. With Democratic candidate and former UM President Donna Shalala running against Republican nominee Maria Salazar, this race is not your typical bipartisan one, as a non-party affiliate by the name of Myra Jolie has joined the running.
Trump flags, Make America Great Again hats, and splashes of red, white, and blue decorate the campaign videos of candidate Jolie. As a lifelong Democrat turned Republican turned non-party affiliate, Jolie is marketing herself as a nonpartisan candidate with an avid support of President Trump.
Trump
has in the past been Islamophobic and racist. So as a woman of color, do you ever feel offended by the things he says?
We are all racist at some point, even if it is by class, color, size, the way we live, or the way we dress, or where we are, what we drive. It's always something. The human being is not that pure. So we are going to be racist at some point.
Sympathizing with Donald Trump has led Jolie to garner a Republican following that's taking away from her fellow Republican competitor Maria Salazar's total potential red votes. But despite being slightly right-leaning and having a conservative following, Jolie's non-party stance is quite simple.
We are too used to have parties deciding what we want or how they're going to represent us. And it's more so that the parties are deciding which one is going to stay in power the longest. And with that, they forget that we are the people are here. So as a result, many people like myself, we just walk away from the parties. And we go independent, or we just decided just to not be affiliated with any parties because we feel like none of them really represent who we are and what we want.
And with that, be sure to head to the polls today, November 6th, where Jolie will be one of several candidates running for Congress.
Despite not having the backing of a particular party, Jolie remains hopeful that her platform will continue to be heard. Reporting for UMTV, I'm Paul Schultz.
Thanks, Paul. Alex, do you think third-party competitors normally have a shot in these races, or what do you think?
Usually not, but they tend to take votes away from potential winners of certain elections, so it'll be interesting to see how this affects the race for Congress.
We'll just have to see how this works out tonight.
And just ahead.
Big name artists have started taking the stage here. I'll be back later with more updates from Miami-Dade College.
Polls closed just a few moments ago here in the Sunshine State. What do they say? I'll have your first look at the results with these numbers from the 2018 midterm elections when we come back.
The polls are set to close any minute now, and while the last of the voters are casting their ballots, the rest of Florida is ready and waiting.
That's right, Alex. The celebrations are in full swing as Floridians watch for the results. So, Alex, do you have any plans for watch parties tonight?
Yes, actually, after the show, I'm going to go with some friends. We're going to watch the results come in. How about you?
Awesome. Well, I'll be in the comfort of my home watching the results come in, but UMTV reporter Tage Joshi joins us live once again, live from the MTV election after party in Kendall. Tage?
There are certainly a lot of major pop culture icons at Miami-Dade College tonight. And over the past year, pop culture icons such as Taylor Swift and LeBron James have entered the political debate. This year's midterm elections are serving as a referendum on Donald Trump's presidency. And another major political icon, The Daily Show with Trevor Noah, brought their critique of President Trump to South Florida this week. Last week, The Daily Show with Trevor Noah brought the Donald J. Trump Presidential Twitter Library to South Florida. Miami Beach became the 5th city to feature the library after Los Angeles, San Francisco, Chicago, and New York City.
And we thought, let's come down. There's this, Miami's a big audience for us. There's a big market here, and we just thought, let's give the people this exhibit. We love it so much, so we thought they would too.
The library boasts many fan favorites, like the infamous Covfefe tweet. And it also features a Trump nickname generator, a timeline of Trump's tweets, and even a presidential toilet. Some patrons were enamored with all the collection had to offer.
I thought it was going to be a small room, maybe 1 or 2 walls, and then we got here and yeah, it was pretty overwhelming, but in a good way.
It's great just to come here and kind of get this fun, refreshing experience and kind of make it a little more tangible about what he's putting on social media.
However, others felt differently.
I already think the media gives Trump too much attention, so it's kind of like highlighting the attention, highlighting the importance, and like giving him another museum.
But the staff still feels the library is a success with a positive reception.
When we come in and see people kind of experiencing it for the first time, that's really cool, just to see them like laughing at things that we created like a while ago, and it's kind of old to us, but it's new to everyone that walks in.
In addition to the presidential Twitter library, The Daily Show also did 4 live shows in South Florida last week. Reporting live for UMTV at Miami-Dade College, Tej Joshi.
And the polls are officially closed, which brings the midterm elections to an end.
The official results will not be available until the morning, but the final projections are out. UMTV election specialist Dave Downey is back with the updates. Dave?
That's right, Brianna. So far in the Senate and the governor races, both the Democratic candidates are up 52.1% to 47.9%. That's in favor of Bill Nelson over Rick Scott. In the governor race, Andrew Gillum leads Ron DeSantis 51.4% to 47.6%. All those races have around 2 million votes in. That adds up to almost 4 million votes total. We have about 30 to 40% of the precincts in both of those races. In the House race, Shalala leads Maria Salazar 52.2% to 45.6% with just under 200,000 votes in there. That's as of almost a half hour ago. So lots of races still to call. All these are too close to call right now, guys. Back to you.
Thank you, Dave. And now the most important question. Alex, did you vote?
Yes, I did.
All right, let me honor you with this I voted sticker.
Excellent.
There you go.
I will wear it with pride.
Awesome. And I also voted here in Florida, but that is all the time we have for this UMTV special presentation.
Thanks for watching and have a great evening.